Welcome to Sleepy University. Tonight we wander back in time, to the land of the Nile, to incense curling through temple air, to soft linen, warm oil, and secrets whispered under moonlight. In ancient Egypt, desire was not hidden. It wasn't shameful. It was sacred. They believed love was written in the stars, yes, but also in the eyes, the skin, the breath, and sometimes in a single drop of honey. That's where our story begins. Close your eyes now, if they're not already closed. Let the day fall away, like a robe slipping from your shoulders. Let's walk slowly, barefoot, through the golden dust of history. You're not dreaming yet, but you're almost there. Long before romance was tamed into etiquette and poetry, it was raw, fragrant, and alive. The Egyptians didn't separate the body from the soul. They saw the body as a channel of divine energy. And erotic energy? That was power. That was magic. That was worship. A woman's smile could be an offering. A man's voice, a spell. They used perfume not only to smell sweet, but to open the senses, to awaken hunger, to summon someone's spirit from afar. A lover might wear a strand of papyrus soaked in oil, believing it could draw the heart of the one they craved. And when words weren't enough, they turned to spells. Hundreds of erotic incantations have been found, scratched onto clay bowls, folded into linen pouches, hidden beneath pillows, some of them soft, some of them desperate, and some frightening in their intensity, but all of them believed to work. Let's listen to one. This one was found in a dusty scroll near the Temple of Isis. I burn the myrrh for you. I call your name. My bed is cold, and my hands empty. Come to me, like the flood to the Nile. Come to me like bees to honey. The Nile was their lifeblood, and so too was longing. When they felt it, they didn't silence it. They shaped it, with fragrance, with rhythm, with ink and voice and fire. And where did they go to learn this art? To the temples, to the priestesses of Hathor, the goddess of love, beauty, music, and joy. But that's where we're headed next. Not just to the walls of the temple, but inside, where music plays low, and the art of seduction was studied, practiced, and revered. So breathe in gently as we step across the threshold of gold and shadow and into the temple of Hathor. We step across the threshold of gold and shadow and into the temple of Hathor. The air is heavy here, perfumed with sweet lotus and wine. Torchlight dances on polished columns. There is music, always music. Soft drums, hand cymbals, slow voices singing invocations to the goddess of joy. Hathor. She is not only the goddess of love, but of laughter, ecstasy, dancing, milk, fertility, and mirrors. And this is no coincidence. To gaze into one's own reflection was a sacred act. To admire the curve of a shoulder, the darkness of an eye, was to honor the divine within the self. The priestesses of Hathor understood this. They didn't just pray, they performed. They were trained in the arts of seduction, not to tease, but to awaken. Their dance was slow, circular, hypnotic, not for entertainment, but for devotion. Their jewelry chimed with every step. Their hair, perfumed with oil, was let loose under moonlight. Their kohl-lined eyes stared not with modesty, but with knowing. They painted their lips red with ochre, not to attract men, but to channel the essence of the goddess. And those who visited the temple did not come only for blessings. They came for transformation. The rituals were not spoken of outside the walls, but we can imagine. A woman approaches the altar, draped in linen, barefooted. She sings softly in a language that no longer exists. She offers a date, a rose, a strand of her own hair. And in return, the priestess touches oil to her wrists and whispers a name that belongs only to the night. This is not mythology. This is legacy. These women were keepers of erotic knowledge, of how to move, how to look, how to breathe in a way that did not arouse shame, but awakened desire. Even the architecture of the temple guided the senses. Rounded walls, dim corridors, painted ceilings of stars. A place where the divine could be felt through touch, scent, and gaze. And they believed that love, true love, required art. It wasn't chaos. It was a cultivated flame, tended by song, scent, and skin. So when someone wished to draw love into their life, they came here to study, to surrender, and to spell. And yes, there were spells, but not like curses, not like commands. They were songs, some spoken aloud, some hummed in the dark. One such spell was etched in gold leaf. Let him dream of me with longing. Let my name tremble on his tongue. Let my scent stir his sleep. Let him come, even across rivers, even across death. The temple was not just stone and shadow, it was a heart, beating with rhythm older than language. And if you stood still enough, you could feel it. Even now, you can feel it. That pulse, that warmth. So stay here a moment longer, among the echoes of anklets, the hush of incense, the breath of 100 rituals lost to time. And when you're ready, we'll move beyond the walls and deeper into the secrets they left behind. The spells, the true love spells, and the longing that lingers still between the lines of old papyrus.
Now, let us move deeper still, through the inner gate, past the courtyard, into the house of rituals. This is where the sacred became physical, where offerings were not just words, but acts. A woman would enter with bare feet, carrying only a jar of honey, a string of pomegranate seeds, a small woven cloth. Nothing here was rushed. Every motion, slow, deliberate, a choreography of devotion. She would pour water over her hands and let it flow, like the Nile in spring. She would anoint her wrists with oil, fragrant and golden. Then, light a small flame. That flame was desire, but not only of the body. It was a yearning for connection, to the gods, to the earth, to someone unknown. In some temples, the rite was to wait, to sit quietly, until a stranger approached and dropped a coin in her lap. Not just a transaction, but a symbol that she had been chosen, seen, desired. And what followed was not shameful. It was sacred. A union, blessed by Hathor herself. They believed that through this ritual, the land would be fertile, the Nile would flood, the people would thrive. It wasn't about the individuals, but the echo of their joining, the energy they created together, offered to the gods. Some say these stories are myth. Others say they remember that somewhere deep in the body, in the hips, the chest, the breath, there is a memory of sacred touch, not for pleasure alone, but for balance, for blessing. And so, ritual became a language, a way to say, I exist, I want, I give. Let your breath slow, let your eyes soften, because next, we'll wander into the gardens of perfume, where scent was spell, and every fragrance whispered a name. You're still walking, but now, barefoot. The stone is warm, and ahead, you see green, a garden, hidden inside temple walls. Quiet, still, filled with the fragrance of things you cannot name. This was where scent was born. Here, the priests and priestesses grew sacred plants, not for eating, but for calling. Blue lotus, frankincense, myrrh, mint, rose. Each had a purpose, each a voice. They believed that scent could open doors no key could reach, that to breathe in certain flowers was to awaken memory, or longing, or love. Women would crush petals with fingers, stir them into honey and wine, rub them behind the knees, into the elbows, at the nape of the neck, not to attract just anyone, but the one who was meant to find them. There was a recipe, written in delicate red ink, for a perfume made from lilies and cinnamon, It was called Come to Me, and in that garden they made it under moonlight, whispered words into the oil as it cooled, stored it in clay jars, sealed with wax, and hidden in linen. Some believed that scent could carry prayers. Others thought it was the prayer itself. Because when you inhale, you let something inside, and when you wear a scent, you carry it with you, invisibly, intimately, like a secret. A woman once said, "He did not see me enter the room, but he turned his head when he smelled my skin." Perfume was not decoration. It was a spell, a form of speech without words. Even today, when a certain smell returns, jasmine, tobacco, warm bread, it brings with it something deeper. A person, a moment, a pulse of the past. So here, in this quiet garden, you are not just resting, you're remembering. And in the next chapter, you'll see how these memories were sealed into objects, rings, knots, amulets, and mirrors, each one a vessel for desire. The garden fades now, and you find yourself indoors once more, but the air still smells of rose and clove, and in front of you, a small table. On it, objects, not treasure, not gold, but something far more intimate. A bronze mirror, worn smooth at the edges, its surface still holding light, still reflecting someone who once stared deeply into it, hoping to see more than just their face. Mirrors in ancient Egypt were not for vanity, they were for vision, to see what was hidden, to call something forward, to say, silently, "I want." Next to the mirror, a small knotted cord. This was a love knot, tied with intention. One loop for the beloved, one for the self, pulled tight with breath held in. Women would sleep with it beneath the pillow, not out of desperation, but of faith. That magic listens. When the heart is clear, there's a ring, carved not with a name, but with a symbol. Two lotus flowers, facing each other. It wasn't just jewelry. It was a message, and beside it, a tiny vial of dried blue petals. The label, long faded, but the memory, still potent. These were not tools for power, but for presence. To remind the wearer, I am worthy of love. I am magnetic. I am open. Even the way objects were placed carried meaning. To wear a ring on the left hand was to invite affection. To anoint the feet was to guide someone towards you in dreams. Magic was not always loud. Sometimes it was a whisper, a thread tucked beneath linen, a scent woven into hair, a glance in the mirror, and a word spoken in the mind. These objects survived not because they were precious, but because someone believed in them. And maybe you still do. Next, we'll step into the final space, where myth becomes memory, and everything we've touched echoes quietly into your dreams. Let your breath slow again, and imagine now a quiet corner of a sunlit room, a reed pen, a scrap of papyrus, and a single person leaning over the page to write something, not for record, not for law, but for longing. These were the love spells, spoken in whispers, carved into bowls, written in red ink, the color of blood, heat, desire. Some were gentle. Let his heart soften like honey. Let his eyes find me in every face. Others were fierce. Let her ache with my name. Let sleep flee from her body until she comes. The spells didn't beg. They commanded, not from cruelty, but from need. From the wild, sleepless hours when love becomes a kind of fever. They used the names of gods. They burned spices. They wrapped the written page with hair, with thread, with breath. It wasn't superstition. It was strategy. It was hope. A woman might go to a scribe, ask him to write the spell for her. Exact, beautiful, powerful, or she might write it herself. Late at night, by the glow of an oil lamp, carefully folding each word into silence. There are bowls, still found buried near doorways, filled with lines like, "Let him burn for me as the desert burns at noon."
Some spells were meant to attract, others to separate, to turn one heart cold so another might return. But most of all, they were offerings, words transformed into magic. Because when you write something down, it lives, and when you speak it aloud, it moves. They believed that desire was not just a feeling, it was a force, a current, and the spell was the key. So now, as you drift in the quiet, imagine the rustle of parchment, the scratch of ink, the scent of clove smoke curling upward. Somewhere, someone is still writing, and in our next passage, we'll follow them into the moonlit dark, where ritual dances begin, and every shadow knows a name. Now the ink dries, the spell is folded, and we step out into the night. Not just any night, a temple night, a moon night, where the stars shine like silver coins and every breeze feels like breath on the skin. They believed the moon saw everything and forgave everything. By her light, rituals took on a different rhythm, quieter, slower, more secret. In the darkened corners of temple courtyards, on the flat roofs of homes, near the river's edge, people met, not always lovers, sometimes just two souls seeking reflection or release. Clothes were looser, voices lower. Sometimes no words were spoken at all, just movement, breath, gesture, the flicker of an oil lamp, the soft rustle of linen falling to the ground, the silence after a kiss. They believed the moon amplified intention, that when you touched someone under her light, your emotions became prayers. So they didn't rush, they didn't explain. A woman might step into the circle barefoot, body painted with oil and crushed rose petals. She might dance, not for an audience, but for the divine. Each sway of her hips, each turn of the wrist, was a verse in an unwritten hymn. The man watching might not approach, might only sit and let her image etch itself into memory. This too was magic, not possession, but presence, to be seen, to be felt, to be remembered. Sometimes they brought offerings, a pomegranate split open, a strand of hair, a stone still warm from the day. Sometimes they brought nothing, but longing. The moon didn't need grand gestures, only sincerity. There are stories of lovers who met once under a full moon and returned every cycle to the same place, without promise, without name, only ritual. And in the morning, no words were spoken, just a nod, and the quiet knowledge that something sacred had passed between them. They didn't call it love, or sex, or even magic. It was simply the night. And now, as you rest deeper, we'll walk into the last chambers, where myth and memory melt together, where desire is not an act, but a presence that never truly leaves. You're still in the temple, but deeper now. Somewhere few have gone. The space is quiet, dim. The air feels heavier, as if layered with memory. There are stories, whispered more than told, of women who gave their bodies not for coin, but for the gods. In ancient texts, they are called many things: temple women, holy servants, sacred brides, and yes, sometimes prostitutes. But what does that word mean here? When a woman lay with a stranger beneath sacred banners, it wasn't just an act, it was a ritual, a reenactment of the union between earth and sky, between goddess and man, between longing and fulfillment. In Babylon, some said that every woman, once in her life, waited near the temple of Ishtar, until a stranger placed a coin in her lap. And with that coin, a silent agreement. Was it myth? Was it memory? Or was it both? She did not do it for payment. She did it for the goddess, to embody her, to carry her power, to bless the act itself. Because in those ancient eyes, sex was not dirty, it was divine. To merge with another body was to brush against eternity, to remember something older than words.
Some scholars doubt these rituals ever happened. Others believe they were real, but misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't every woman. Maybe it wasn't always physical. But the truth lies not in fact, but in feeling. In the sense that to be touched in sacred space with sacred purpose was not shameful. It was an offering. There were priestesses who danced naked beneath the stars, bodies painted in ochre and wine, faces tilted to the heavens, not to arouse, but to pray, because the body was the altar, and pleasure was the flame. So as you lie here now, still and warm and safe, consider this. What if your body is sacred too? What if the act of desire, even quiet, even unspoken, is a kind of remembering? In the final passage, we'll drift toward that remembering, where myth, scent, touch, and spell become something softer, something like sleep.
Close your eyes and breathe in. If you could smell this moment, what would it carry? In ancient Egypt, scent was not decoration. It was sacred. It cloaked the body in intention. It marked space as holy, and it whispered things that lips dared not say. There were oils for seduction, and oils for mourning, perfumes for queens, and perfumes for gods. Blue lotus, soaked in wine, jasmine crushed into oil, cinnamon boiled with honey. They made ointments so potent that one drop on the wrist could stir dreams for nights. A woman might anoint herself before stepping into the temple, a dab behind the ear, a trace on the inside of her thigh, not to attract, but to align, to become more than body, to become sensation. The scent said, I am here, I am open, I am more than what you see. They wore cones of scented fat on their heads, melting slowly in the heat, releasing fragrance hour by hour. Each perfume told a story, of first touch, of longing glances across the courtyard, of memories pressed into skin. And when lovers met, they remembered each other by scent. She smelled of myrrh and sun-warmed stone. He carried cedar wood and the salt of the river. Even the dead were wrapped in oils, their journey to the next world softened by fragrance, because they believed the gods could smell devotion. So now, breathe in again. Let your own memories drift closer. A perfume once worn, a body once held, a moment once scented with something you couldn't name but never forgot. In our next part, we enter sleep more fully, into dreams, where these memories return not as thoughts, but as visitors. Now you are deeper, almost drifting, somewhere between thought and dream. In ancient Egypt, this space, this soft space, was sacred. Dreams weren't random. They were messages, whispers from the gods, from the dead, from parts of ourselves we had forgotten to listen to. There were temples built not for worship, but for sleeping. People would travel for days just to rest there, in hopes that a vision would come, a cure, a sign, a name spoken in the dark. They called it incubation, a ritual of sleep, a prayer without words. Before lying down, they bathed, anointed their bodies with oil, tied protective amulets around their wrists, burned blue lotus, and surrendered. And in those dreams, lovers returned. Lost children whispered. A deity might appear, half animal, half human, offering a single sentence that changed everything. Some women left bowls beside their beds with honey, milk, and rose petals to invite the right dream. Others pressed written spells under their pillows. Let me dream of his eyes. Let his voice echo through the veil. They believed that desire could travel across sleep, that your longing might touch someone from miles away, might visit them in the quiet of night, might enter their dream as a scent, a shape, a warmth. And sometimes, just sometimes, both dreamers met in the same vision, unseen by the waking world, but very real to them. So as your own breath deepens, know this: you are not alone in the dark. The dream world is wide and soft and ancient,
And soon, we will step further into the secret dreams of men, into their spells, their fears, their fragile rituals of love. Let's turn now to the other side of longing. The women danced, anointed, waited. But the men, they dreamed too, and they cast spells of their own. In the dim corners of markets, they bought charms wrapped in linen, tiny figurines with carved names, scrolls written in red ink, folded carefully and hidden beneath pillows. There were spells to attract, to bind, to make her dream of him, night after night. Some used honey to sweeten her feelings. Some used wine to loosen the boundary between thought and touch. There were men who believed that a woman's heart could be stirred with words alone. So they whispered incantations into the wind, lit candles in secret, scratched her name into soft clay, and buried it beneath her doorstep. Sometimes they asked the gods for help. Sometimes they begged. Let her eyes seek mine in a crowd. Let her lips forget all others. But not all was pure. There were darker spells, ones that tangled love with control. Men who feared rejection might try to bind a woman's will, might call upon spirits to make her restless without him, to make her burn with a desire she didn't understand. And yet, even in these shadows, there was tenderness. Because even the strongest spells could not guarantee a returned gaze, a real touch, a shared sigh in the dark. They wanted to be chosen, not just obeyed. And when the spell failed, some men wept, others waited, others tried again, with quieter hope. Because love, even in magic, is fragile. In our next part, we'll drift into the silence between spells, where longing lingers and history fades. Some spells never worked. Some words faded before they reached the wind. And some desires were never spoken at all. There were women who lit the candle, then changed their mind. Men who pressed their thumb into the wax, but said nothing. There was no spell for a heart that had moved on. No oil to erase a name whispered too often. In the stillness between rituals, something else lived. The waiting, the wondering. A girl watching the horizon, knowing he would not return, but hoping still. A man passing the temple and not going in. Because sometimes, longing itself was the point. Not the kiss, not the answer, but the ache. The space between lovers where memory stretches, warm and endless. Ancient Egypt knew how to hold that silence, not fill it, just let it exist. That's why they left offerings at empty shrines, wrote names in tombs that would never be read. They believed in things that lived beyond proof, like a scent that lingers long after someone has gone, like a dream that doesn't make sense but won't leave you. So if tonight, you're lying still but thinking of someone, even if they are long gone, you are not foolish. You are ancient. There is one last stretch of night ahead, and in it, we'll explore what happened when these sacred desires began to disappear, and how they echo even now. There came a time when the old spells were no longer spoken, the temples were closed, the statues fell silent, and the sacred rituals of love became whispers, or disappeared. What once was divine, touch, scent, desire, was now called shame. New voices rose telling people to hide their longing, to fear it. The words of magic were burned, the oils poured out, the scrolls buried deep. But longing does not vanish. It simply moved into other shapes. A glance held too long, a letter never sent, a dream you wake from blushing. They still wrote things, on papyrus, on skin, on walls no one would ever see. If I can't have your voice, let me keep the memory of it. Let me be the air that brushes your shoulder. It was quieter then, more dangerous, but still full of beauty. Because love always finds a way, even when it has to hide. So they hid it. In songs, in stories, in small objects tucked inside clothes. And sometimes, They did nothing. They simply felt. And that too was a kind of spell. In the next part, we'll listen to the echo, what remains of these ancient desires inside us, even now. Close your eyes, if they aren't closed already. Now breathe, gently. There is something ancient still living in you. It isn't a thought or a memory. It's deeper, like scent or music, or the warmth of a hand that once touched yours. We no longer burn blue lotus. We no longer whisper spells into clay. But desire, it remains. You felt it. A glance from across the room. A dream that made you ache. A voice that lingered even after the phone call ended. That is magic. You are not separate from those ancient women who waited outside the temple, or those men who wrote secret names into the sand. You carry them, in the way you look at someone without speaking, in the way your chest tightens when you remember someone you once loved, in the way you lie here now, soft, quiet, and still feeling. This is your temple, this breath, this body, this night. And no matter what the world has told you, desire is not a flaw. It is a thread that ties you to centuries of dreaming, aching, longing. Let it stay with you as you drift deeper now, because in the final part, we'll leave the temple behind and step into sleep. You have traveled far tonight, through smoke and oil, through prayers written in petals, through glances cast across time. You have passed through desire, through longing, through the softest parts of memory. And now, you have arrived, not at a place, but at a feeling. This is the temple of sleep. There are no walls here, no gods watching, just the hush that falls over your chest, the quiet behind your eyes. Here, your breath is incense, your heartbeat, a drum echoing in the dark. You don't need to be anything now, not beautiful, not clever, not chosen, only here, only still. Let the memories fade, let the spells dissolve, let even the names fall away. There is nothing to hold, nothing to prove. You have earned this silence. You are soft now and safe. All the voices of the past, the women by the temple gates, the men writing in secret, the gods with many faces, they are quiet now, and they leave you here with yourself. Can you feel the warmth of the night pressing gently against your skin? The way dreams begin to rise like mist? There is no need to follow them. Let them come. Let them pass. You are not searching anymore, not waiting. You are the fire that doesn't ask to be seen. You are the shadow that no longer fears the dark. This body is a sacred place. This moment is enough. So sleep now, without trying, without asking. Just sleep, sleep, sleep. And when you wake, if you feel a quiet echo within you, know that you're always welcome to return. There are many more journeys waiting here, stories softly told, worlds to fall asleep to. If this lecture brought you peace, you can support Sleepy University by subscribing to the channel, giving a gentle like, and exploring our other sleep lectures. Each one is a doorway into history, into calm, into yourself. But for now, just rest. We'll be here when you return.